Welcome to the 10 Days Before Christmas, a collection of modern BL short stories, told softly between falling snow, quiet lights, and those small moments where everything can change. Each day leading up to Christmas, a meeting, a pause, a confession, a simple story, but never an ordinary one. Take a breath. Settle in. Here is today's story.
My name is Adrien Colden, and I am a person of habit. This is not something I mention casually because people tend to misunderstand it. They hear habit and think I mean routines like liking the same cereal or preferring aisle seats. What I mean is that my brain functions best when the world behaves within previously negotiated parameters. I wake up at 6:30 every morning, including weekends, because sleeping in makes me feel like I've misplaced an important document. My alarm tone has been the same for 4 years. I once tried changing it and spent the entire morning unsettled, like I'd left the stove on somewhere I couldn't find. I shower for exactly 7 minutes. I dress in the same order: shirt, socks, pants, sweater, because deviating from that sequence causes a low-grade irritation that no one else can see but everyone eventually feels. At 7:12, I leave my apartment. I lock the door. I test the handle once. I walk 2 blocks east and half a block south to the café on the corner. I arrive at 7:20, give or take a minute, depending on whether the crosswalk light is feeling cooperative or vindictive. The barista, Mara, sees me come in and reaches for a mug before I speak. "Morning, Adrien," she says. "Morning," I reply. Coffee appears. I pay. We nod at each other like coworkers acknowledging a job well done. Then I sit. The table is by the window, but not pressed against it. It gets light without glare. It's close enough to an outlet that my charger reaches naturally, far enough from the counter that no one bumps my chair or drags a coat across my back. I can see the door without facing it directly, which allows me to monitor the world without participating in it. I have been sitting in that seat for 4 years, 3 months, and 18 days. Not consecutively, there have been vacations, colds, a brief plumbing catastrophe, but consistently enough that the cafe staff considers it mine. New customers drift toward it and are gently redirected. Regulars avoid it instinctively, the way people avoid standing too close to strangers at bus stops. I didn't claim it, I simply stayed. Routine, people say, is a cage. For me, it's a railing. Something to hold while the rest of the world insists on movement. Which is why, on the first Monday of December, when I pushed open the cafe door and saw a man sitting in my seat, my body reacted before my thoughts could assemble a civil response. I stopped. Not abruptly, not dramatically, just enough that my momentum stalled, like my internal map had encountered a blank space labeled "Error, expected object not found." Someone was sitting in my seat. He wasn't doing anything wrong, which was deeply inconvenient. He wasn't sprawled out or loud or oblivious. He sat neatly, coat folded over the back of the chair the way I folded mine, coffee placed slightly to the right of center, book open but untouched, as if he'd paused mid-thought. I stood there longer than necessary. At first, he didn't notice. I watched his hand curl around the mug, watched him turn a page, watched the small furrow between his brows appear and disappear as he read. I told myself I was deciding where else to sit, that I was being flexible. The truth was simpler. I was staring at him like he personally removed a load-bearing wall from my morning. Eventually, inevitably, he felt it. People always do. His gaze lifted slowly, cautiously, the way someone looks up when they sense attention rather than hear it. His eyes met mine. I did not look away. There was a brief, charged moment where we simply assessed each other. He took in my posture, my coat, the way I stood like someone waiting for the universe to apologize. Understanding flickered across his face. "Oh," he said quietly. Not startled, just aware. "Sorry." He didn't move yet. "Were you—" He paused, glancing at the table, then back at me. "Were you heading here?" "Yes," I said. Not aggressively, just firmly, like a fact. He studied me for another second, then smiled, not smug, not apologetic, curious, like he had just confirmed a theory he hadn't been sure would pan out. "I see," he said. "I didn't realize it was occupied. It usually is, I replied. That was the first edge, mild, polite, sharpened enough to be felt. He nodded as if filing that information away and then, crucially, did nothing. I waited. People misunderstand waiting. They think it's indecision. In my case, it's expectation. For 4 years, the world had responded predictably to my presence in that seat. People noticed, people moved, I sat. This man did not move. After a beat, he said, "Would you like me to relocate?" The wording was careful, diplomatic, almost charming, but it came too late. "No," I said, surprising both of us. "It's fine." It was not fine, but neither was explaining myself to a stranger before caffeine. I turned away and chose another table. The rest of the morning felt wrong in ways too small to articulate but too persistent to ignore. The light hit my screen at the wrong angle, someone brushed past my shoulder, the hum of conversation pressed closer than usual, like the cafe collectively leaned in to observe my discomfort. I finished my coffee 10 minutes earlier than normal and left without reading a single word of the article I had opened. I told myself it was a one-time disruption. I told myself I would reclaim the seat tomorrow. On Tuesday, he was there again. This time, I didn't stop. I walked straight to the counter, ordered my coffee, and turned deliberately towards the table, as if confidence alone might restore order. He looked up sooner this time, like he was expecting me. "Morning," he said, cheerful in a way that suggested sleep. "Morning," I replied, neutral but unmistakably judgmental. He shifted in his chair, just slightly, creating space without vacating it. "I didn't mean to step on a routine," he said. "I just moved to the neighborhood, still calibrating." "That makes one of us," I said. "I don't recalibrate well." "I've noticed." That should have unsettled me. Instead, it irritated me in a very specific, very interesting way. When he stood to refill his coffee, he left his book behind. I noticed. I did not take the seat. When he returned, his eyes flicked to the chair, then back at me. "You didn't steal it." "I have principles," I replied. "They're inconvenient, but consistent." He considered that. "Those are the worst kind. They stick." By Thursday, Mara had started raising her eyebrows when she handed me my coffee. "You know," she said casually, "we do have other tables." "Yes," I said, "but I have tenure." She snorted. The man, Colin Madden, as I would later learn, arrived within my time window every morning. Not early enough to seem desperate, not late enough to be accidental. I tried adjusting my schedule. He adjusted with me. On Friday, I arrived 3 minutes earlier than usual. He was already there. I stared at him. He smiled. "You're glaring again," Colin said. "I'm assessing." "Should I be nervous?" "Only if you value predictability." Tragic. I just started liking this place. December settled around us. Lights appeared in the windows. A small artificial tree showed up by the pastry case. The cafe was filled with random people pretending they weren't exhausted, but Colin was always present. Some mornings he kept the seat, some mornings he slid over without comment. Occasionally he saved it with his scarf, draped deliberately across the cushion. Once I arrived to find the chair pulled out, waiting. I paused. "You're going to pretend this is accidental," I said. "I absolutely am," he replied. "If I stop coming," he said a morning, stirring his coffee, "you'll finally get your seat back." "I'd have to reassess my entire personality," I said. "That seems dramatic." "You're sitting in my chair," I replied. "We passed dramatic weeks ago." Then one morning, near the 3rd week of December, he wasn't there. The seat sat empty. I stood there longer than necessary, ordered my coffee without sitting, waited. It occurred to me quietly, devastatingly, that I didn't want the seat anymore. I wanted him. He arrived 5 minutes later, cheeks pink from the cold, eyes scanning automatically for me instead of the chair. He ordered his coffee, took it, walked past the seat. He sat across from me. "I think," Colin said carefully, "we're past pretending this was about furniture." I laughed, a real one. "You weaponized my habits." "I respected them," he corrected, very gently. Epilogue. 6 months later, The seat by the window is still empty. Not abandoned, not forgotten, just unused, like a habit that learned how to rest. The cafe has changed a little since December. The lights are gone, the artificial tree has been replaced by a chalkboard sign advertising cold brew with an optimism I don't trust. Mara got a new haircut and insists it's low maintenance, which is demonstrably false. My routine, however, remains intact. I still wake up at 6:30, I still leave at 7:12, I still arrive at 7:20, give or take a minute depending on the temperament of the crosswalk light. The difference is that now, Colin arrives with me. Sometimes he beats me there, sometimes I beat him. Occasionally, we walk in together, which feels like cheating, but in a way I've decided to allow. We chose a different table this time, one closer to the center of the cafe, more exposed, less ideal by every metric I once cared about. It turns out compromise is easier when the person you're compromising with understands why you measure outlet distance with your eyes. "You know," Colin says one morning, watching me angle my chair a fraction to the left, "most people wouldn't notice that this table is 3 inches closer to the counter." "I'm not most people," I reply. "No," he says softly, "that's what I like." He steals a sip of my coffee. I glare. He smiles like this is a shared hobby. This happens daily. The staff have opinions now. Mara leaned over the counter once and said, "So, we're really letting the window seat go?" "Yes," I said. She looked between me and Colin. "Voluntarily?" "I've evolved," I replied. Colin laughed into his sleeve. Some mornings, when the cafe is quiet and the light settles just right, I still look at the seat. Old habits don't disappear. They loosen. They wait. Once Colin notices. "You miss it," he says. "I miss what it represented," I answer. "And what was that?" "Control," I say. Then, after a pause, "a version of my life that didn't require adjustment." He doesn't tease me. He never does. "And now?" he asks. I look at him, at the familiar slope of his shoulder, at the way his knee presses lightly against mine, steady and unremarkable in the best way. "Now," I say, "I still like predictability. I just like choosing you more." He turns toward me slowly. His hand finds mine on the table, fingers threading together with practiced ease. Then he leans in. The kiss is quiet, unshowy, a soft, certain press of his mouth against mine, like punctuation rather than a declaration. When he pulls back, he stays close, forehead brushing my temple. Behind us, someone settles into the window seat for the first time in years. I don't turn around. Colin squeezes my hand once, steady and sure, and for the first time, my mornings feel exactly where I belong.
And that was today's story, one of 10 stories gently leading us toward Christmas. If this moment stayed with you, feel free to leave a comment or share it with someone who enjoys stories told from the heart. We'll meet again tomorrow for another encounter, another quiet spark, and one step closer to Christmas. Until then, take care and leave a little room for softness.